Welcome to the Tough Fish Show. I am so excited to welcome back Tami Matheny. Tami, it has been a month or so since your episode dropped, and I am so excited that you're back because we can have an even deeper discussion. And so thank you for coming back.
Well, I have been looking forward to it since we got off our last one. I enjoyed that, and I feel like we have a lot more to share with your listeners out there.
Yeah, I totally do too, and I'm so grateful. And so really in our previous conversation, we really were kind of hovering around confidence and focus. And I love that because both of those are so integral in when you are a writer, because you are building your confidence with your writing and then building your confidence to put yourself out there with a published work and sharing your work. And it does require focus and discipline and support. And I think that those are just instrumental. And especially as a business owner, you're doing the same things when you're a business owner. So when we were chatting prior to the recording, there is a circle that you have in your uh, program. And this kind of just naturally is an extension into that. So would you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So I call it the circle of success. In the middle of the circle is your why. And I think we elaborated on that in our first discussion too.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you know your why, it's going to help you get through the challenging times, the times you feel like quitting or giving up. And it just helps keep you focused. So that's kind of in the middle that grinds the circle, keeps it, flowing. Then you have confidence at one point in the circle, focus, the two that we've talked about. And then the third that I think is interesting that we're going to highlight today is unity. It doesn't matter if you're trying to overcome any challenge or adversity in front of you, or you're trying to accomplish any goal or dream that you've set, but you've got to be unified with those around you, with your teammates, with those that you need for success. We can't create success alone. We need others. And sometimes we can forget that if we're in individual sports or as writers when we're just working alone. So I think that's an important piece and the importance of relationships.
Yes, yes. I think that is really important. And especially as a writer, you much of what you're doing is solitary, it's between you and the page and working through that. Yes, there's research. Yes, you might work with beta readers or you work with your editor or editors. You might work at the critique group, a cover designer, an alt or a publisher. So you might have other people and you build that village, which is wonderful. But it does start out with you by yourself and being comfortable, getting comfortable, building that confidence to create your village and expand your work. But what would you say to somebody if they're not, they're questioning if they really need to build, a village per se, that maybe they think that, well, no, I only need one or two people at most. I don't need to have, much more than that into having bigger relationships. I just need one or two. I need a designer maybe, or I can design it myself. And maybe I do need an editor, but that's pretty much it. I'm just going to stick to these one or two, and that's it.
Well, you need readers. So, and I say that jokingly, but truthfully, but we need others. Part, I feel like the main reason that we're on this earth is for connection. And we are here to connect and build relationships, whether that's relationships with people that are actually doing jobs that are helping your goal come true, or building relationships with those that you want to sell to so they can connect with you and build this. They want to know more about you and what you've put on the page. And then last but not least is the relationship with the people in your life that support you and help you through those challenging moments or give you that motivational or confidence or just understanding when you have writer's block or when you've been turned down by an editor. So I think there's a lot of different types of people that we do need. And to
Yes.
think that we can be successful alone or with one or two, I think is short-sighted.
I would agree with that. And whether, somebody listening is, you know, only coming from their writer's hat or they're coming from a business owner's hat, a business owner, even though you might be a solopreneur, you are still working with others to help grow your business and connect with others, whether it's clients, to your point, readers. Maybe you're working with other people to help build your website or to do graphic designs or social media or whatever. If you open up that aperture, you're really leveraging other people's strengths so you can leverage yours just as much. It's a way to create space for you to do more of what you love and more of what your zone of genius is, because you're delegating that which is not, and or maybe is but not that great, and to somebody else where it is their zone of genius, and then you're building each other up. And then that's really what I'm hearing, and that's how I perceive it myself.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said, and I think another point to highlight there is that let's say it's someone designing your book cover. The more you connect with them, then they automatically have a greater understanding of what you're going for because they know you. And when you can share yourself, people can better help you in whatever role that they play in that.
I agree. I'm really glad you said that because, to your point, a membership that I'm a part of, I have worked with the host, who is like a strategic consultant type of thing, in helping me build infrastructure in my business. I've got this idea, this is where I think it can go. Have I mapped out all of the infrastructure pieces that are needed in order to properly put this thing in place so that it functions well, so that it serves my clients, my prospective clients, and but it serves me. And getting another set of eyes helps you to identify if you've got blind spots, or maybe you have something pretty good, but then they go, you know what? If we do this, it'll take it up a notch. Or they might say, once you reach this point, then we need to do Y and Z, because this will help you grow that even more. And but you might not have gotten there without getting help.
Very true. To your point, it's important that people give us ideas. I work in the athletic realm, and I always say the difference between confidence and cockiness is that confidence, you are secure in who you are, but you don't know it all. So you're open to being coached or open to being given suggestions. And when we think we can do something alone, to me, that's a little more cockiness, that we think we have all the answers. We don't need anyone. Um, and that's the biggest difference between someone that is cocky and confident. So sometimes I think there's a misperception of, well, I can't listen to other people's suggestions because that might mean there's a weakness inside of me. But again, we need others. We need others to grow. We need others to function. We need others. I mean, I could just keep going. We need others.
So let's talk about your book, the latest book that you have out. It was
Mhm.
co-authored. Now, you know, that is a great demonstration of connection and unity, because you both had stories individually or a perception individually for a book. And yes, you could have done them individually and they would have been great books. But by combining them and and rather combining your ideas and combining your your energy with it, your excitement with it, playing off of each other, playing devil's advocate with each other, you created one book, but one book was strong and powerful, and probably felt even more complete because of that. What would you say to that?
I, Everything that you said is totally on point. I think all of those positives happened, but I think the biggest benefit I got from it was having an accountability partner. And I love that. Okay, I can't just put this writing off today because I've told Jeff that I would have this done by such and such time. And it was probably the most efficient of any of the books that I've written because of that. The other ones, I would get on a roll and then have, some long drawn out periods. But, and we had weekly meetings. So that weekly meeting is like, I have to have my whatever responsibilities turned in. And it was great just to write something, then hey, look at this with different set of eyes and give me your honest feedback. That took some vulnerability in, first of all, asking for help, but also trusting each other to be honest, not, oh, that looks great all the time. Um, so it was a great experience, I think, for both of us. And there was more satisfaction maybe in creating something together because this was a journey that we experienced together. And again,
Mhm.
I'm in the sporting realm, so it was like my teammate.
Yeah.
And sometimes as a middle game coach, I can get a little lonely. I don't have a team. I work with teams, but I don't have my own team. Um, so I think I really enjoyed that process. And now we've got two groups of, his followers, my followers to, sell and promote to. And we're just bringing in new people to each other. So all the way around, it's been a great experience.
And to your point about that, because you both you collaborated and your respective groups came together, but they also came together in a particular, like in a Facebook group where they could commingle. I would imagine that just even that feels like a really beautiful ripple effect that happens because relationships were built. And it started with you and Jeff having a solid relationship, a solid friendship, and then turning that into, okay, because we're cross promoting, but we're working with each other, we're bringing in new people into my world, into his world, into mine. But those, all of those individuals were finding each other and growing and connecting too. And it's just like a ripple effect.
I hadn't even thought of that, but you are so true. And the stories, we had a webinar and, two ladies that had connected with us to help with the book in various ways behind the scenes, they were both on the webinar. And it was great for them to connect and hear what the other said. And now, they've created a relationship as well in a different role. You and we wouldn't have
Mhm.
connected if I hadn't done the book with Jeff because I met you through Jeff. So I do think there is a power, and when you connect, it's long lasting with that ripple effect.
You mentioned something earlier I'd like you to go back to your point about, you know, being a mental health coach. I'm kind of likening it to an example you gave me earlier before we hit record, which was kind of like the runner who technically doesn't have a team like, a soccer team has or a baseball team where they really have to know each other's parts and such. But a writer might feel like they are that runner where they're the ones who have to get it done. Yes, the editor can help. That might give them a little pit stop break, but at the end of the day, they are the ones writing. They are the ones carrying their baton and finishing that race all the way through. How would you suggest that they look at growing that team? Like, how would you suggest that they kind of open that aperture some?
Well, if you're that runner or even golfer, I think golf might
Oh, good
be
idea.
your sport to, analogy. Um, who do you need to help you be successful? And you need people that have been there and done it, or at least that have learned from others and can pass on that advice. I needed that with my first book. I needed someone that had written to give me suggestions and the do's and don'ts, and it saved me some steps of hearing what didn't work or did work. You need support people, whether it's someone for nutrition or massage or strength and conditioning coaches. And so I think that that's a great analogy to a writer. We need all those other key pieces. Um, but ultimately, individual sports, it's nice at the end of the day when you've had success to be able to share that with someone as well. And I think, we forget that. I would have felt very empty if I had not built a group of support people, family, friends, whoever that are supporting your journey. When I put my first book out, it would have been, oh, but it was, I think the part I got so excited about was I got to share this with people that were behind the scenes that helped me through that. So I think there are finding those that can actually add and benefit to your goal. publisher, editor, graphic design, whatever that may be. But then that second piece is the people in your life that can fuel you, give you advice, give you support, encouragement.
And one of the places that I really like the most about a book, I love the acknowledgments because it's almost like a love letter from the author to those individuals. Even if it's just simply this is who I want to thank, and it's short and sweet.
Mhm.
It's still, these are people who contributed in some way to the author's journey, and they were important to the author to say something for. And doesn't mean that those who aren't acknowledged aren't important. It's just maybe for that particular book, maybe some individuals just were there a little bit more than others or what have you. And for instance, like with the book that I just had out, my husband read so many pages and would give me feedback. And I was so grateful because part of the several of the chapters, I was teaching things that I learned through my corporate experience or through my MBA program. And I really wanted to, or just through life and being, in the author business and figuring out things along the way that I didn't know. And I remember giving him chapters going, tell me what you take away. Did I teach this in a way that made sense? And because I knew that he had a background that could definitely tell me quickly, that was helpful because I wanted him to tell me that it was wrong, essentially. If it was wrong, I needed to know. And if it was working, tell me what's working. And I was so grateful. And I can't tell you how many times I'm like, can I just read this one more thing? And sometimes he would go, one more. Okay. I'm like, thank you. But he was
He
the
probably was
biggest
more excited for the book to be done than you.
probably, but I'm so grateful because what that did was help me to figure out, am I teaching this in the way that I need? And I know this material, I'm doing it for who I know I want to serve, but I still was calibrating the information itself. And I was beyond thankful. And to your point, to your point about accountability, for instance, with my book, I know that I asked my editor, like, this is what I'm trying to achieve. When do I need to get my manuscript to you? She said, you need to get it to me by X date. Can you do that? And it was basically like a month and a half out. And I went, yep, I can do that. And I did, and I made it happen. And I am so thankful I did because just by setting that date and having it a future out, so telling her your time is important to me. I want to secure a window on your calendar, and I am going to meet my requirement. Ask the slot that I'm asking for. I'm meeting it by giving you the manuscript by this date. I'm not only showing her respect, but I'm showing it to myself because it was important enough to me to make it happen. But that created a very clear line in the sand. Be done. You said this book was important to you by X date. She's told you she'll support you if you will get it to her by Y date. So you need to get on with it, Jen. That helped a lot.
There's so much I wanted to say with what you just said, but the first one is it takes me back to a definition of confidence I heard not long ago. And confidence is sticking to your promises to yourself. And that's so true. If you have a deadline, you say you're going to do something that helps with confidence. I know that's kind of veering off what we're talking about, but that
It's
just
all
came
good.
to me. But with your husband, that had to have created a stronger connection for you two because he was a strong part of that journey.
Yeah.
And so I loved how it was almost like you had a project together. So that created more unity. I love that whole story.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, as soon as the book was released and I was like, we need to go celebrate. We need to celebrate. I want to treat you to just celebrate the fact that this is done and thank you. So yeah, it was just, you're right. That's a cool way to look at that. I'm going to tell him after when I
But
see him next. That's awesome.
um, I also wanted to go back to the acknowledgments because, you know, I love that page. And as a reader, before I became an author, I always read that. And I've heard so many people that will skip over it. But it's always resonated with me that you take that time out to thank those that helped. And it's been something I look forward to, but also a challenging part for me as a writer, because I want to make sure I do it right or thank the right people, not leave anyone out for that project.
Mhm.
But even more so is the dedication page. And I have made it a strong point that that book, there's a connection to someone in my life and dedicating it to them. Um, so, that to me shows the importance that that person, that relationship I've had with that person has tied into that book. Um, so
I
that I
love
was just, thinking of that as you were saying that. And, working with Jeff, he kept saying, well, the dedication page isn't done. I'm like, I know. It's gotta be, you know, it's gotta be right. And so, that's an important symbol for me as a writer in my books.
I love that. And yes, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think that it is really important. I just love the fact that you took time to decide that too. Sometimes you kind of know, and that's okay. But sometimes when you just, if you know you need to take a little more time to make that decision, that's okay too. There's no, you know, unless you're supposed to hit publish on a certain date and somehow this is not in the manuscript and you really wanted it there, and you can still fix it or what have you, but you you can make that happen. And I think that that's really cool that you wanted to put the time and effort into it with the same, treating that one piece just as important as the chapters themselves. You know, if you think about a book, there's that front matter and the back matter, and all of that's important for the construct of that book. But to your point, that particular page is just as important as the page on chapter one or the page at the very end of the book or the pages in between. I just love that you said that.
And
Really do.
it's interesting. It ties into everything that we're talking about today. But what I decided on for the book with Jeff, Challenger Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity, was my parents. And I know a lot of people think, okay, you're going to thank your parents. Um, but it took me a while to recognize I always wanted to be like my dad. He was the one that had confidence and focus and determination. And then you set a goal, you go after it. But what took me a while to recognize was my mother's influence of relationships. And that's what I thanked her for in the book of thanking her for being that model of how important relationships are in our lives. Um, and that again, that kind of all came full circle with the connection with Jeff and
Yeah.
us connecting with the book. So, my mom, it took a while. She probably banged her head on the wall a while because it was about me early on and achieving in sports. But I have come to recognize that I am nothing without other people in my life, and I'm not going to create anything without others in my life.
I love that. I love that so, so much. So how do you take this intent about building unity and having unity like this? How do you parlay that when you are speaking in front of a group? So if somebody is listening and they are wanting to dip their toe into some form of public speaking, whether it's on a podcast or maybe it's doing a workshop or presenting at a summit or potentially speaking in front of a group, how, whatever that group is, what would you say to them?
Well, I think the more you put yourself out there, the preparation piece, the more confident you're going to be with anything. It's funny. I was just talking to my longest best friend from when I was 5 years old. I just was able to see her yesterday, and she was laughing and saying, if you would have told me you do what you do now, back then, there's no way I would have believed it. Because she had to speak for me. I couldn't open my mouth and say, yes, I want this for dinner. I would whisper to her and she'd say, hey, Tammy wants this. I mean, in class, I was scared to death to raise my hand. And so it just blows her mind now that I get on stage with hundreds of people. Um, so it was about getting myself out there. And still today, I tell myself I am great at talking to people. It's not natural for me. And that's probably important to say. People might say, oh, she's a public speaker. So of course it's easy for her. But it has not always been. It's getting myself outside that comfort zone, preparing. I don't know how many times I've walked around the house just saying things out loud or looking at myself in the mirror, and just practicing and rehearsing until it's like second nature to you.
Yes.
Um, then it's the focus piece when you get on stage. Are you focused on what others are thinking? Or are you focused on what you're doing? And that's, as a writer, am I focused on the message I want to give across, or am I worried what people are going to think?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter. We can't have two thoughts at one time. So what are you focused on? If it's not productive, then learn to shift your thoughts so you can focus on something that will help you. So
Yeah.
preparation and self-talk, I think, are the two biggest things as far as getting yourself out there to audiences. And the more we do it, the more you get comfortable with it. And then for a lot of us, it becomes a drug. And the more you want to talk, and the more you want to share, and the more you want to connect. So,
Yes. And to your point, it's shifting that focus too, because if you're
mhm.
focused on being of service and you're focused on saying, I want to make a connection with one person there, it might not be, yes, you might have a room of 30 or you might have hundreds, but is there one person there that you can connect with? And when you wrote that presentation or when you put together that workshop, were you focused on helping that one person to make the change or give them the information they needed and make things better in that way for them? When you did that and you're focused in that way, it shifts it so that even if you're nervous, you're coming from a space of, I want to do this because I want to help somebody else. And I have this message that is important. It's not, you're not focusing it on you, you're focusing on others. And because you've made that one connection, and then you make another, and then you make another, and you're helping that focusing on that one, you're creating unity because the two of you equal two. But this in the same breath, you are going to create, again, going back to that ripple effect, there's going to be more people, and you don't know the impact you will have because you helped that one.
Well, we are bringing this full circle because that's like staying true to your why and what creates success. If I know why I'm giving that talk or that presentation, and then I can connect with one person, make a difference with one person, then that's what you're focused on, and amazing things usually happen. But early on when I would go and speak to teams, then every team, every group, every presentation, there's going to be someone not enjoying it or wish they were somewhere else. I would zoom in on them, and I would be like, I want to win them over. It was almost like
Socratic
competition.
method.
Yeah, but what I realized was I was spinning my wheels and losing those that I could have been bringing in. So, back to your point, zoom in on that one person. And if you touched one person with your writing, with your speaking, with a post that you put on social media, you have done your job. You are living your why. You've made a difference. And then that one person probably will share. It's kind of like leadership. Teams will ask me, well, how am I a leader? Well, you can't lead the whole team. It starts with the girl or the guy beside of you. And you lead yourself first, but lead them yourself, lead one, get them to lead someone, you reach out to someone else. And it is that ripple effect. And I think that's in many areas in our life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that you started with zooming in on the one and then recognized, wait a minute, I, I need to make this change. And because you were willing to do that, you could probably feel that shift for yourself too.
Mhm.
And, you know, I love that because you were focused on where you could make the difference. And it's not that you may convert those at a later time. You may not have converted them at all, or they might have said, okay, that was cool. I'm still glad I came. And it might be that a little bit later, a couple weeks later, they might go, you know what? There was something there. Cool.
And I've had that happen. Even years later, I've had people, I get it now. Thank you.
But the fact that if they tell you, hey, you did something there and you did create a connection, you did create unity in that space because even if you didn't know it. And I think that's the other part too, is that what I hear you saying, And is that to keep, like you said, going back to the why, but continue to show up and do what you are, what if it's important to you to do, and you understand that when you're showing up for you like that, that's that is the fulfilling part of it, and you'll get more out of it, and so will other people.
It's being authentic and true to yourself.
Absolutely. This has been awesome. I
You,
did not,
you
I fully expected that. And you, of course, delivered tenfold. Tammy, you rock. You
know,
rock.
well, I think you rock as well. So here we
Thank
are
you.
collaborating, and hopefully we're really rocking at least the one person out there, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
One thing I do want to end on, I know our time's wrapping up here, but I think I shared the last time that I'm part of the Jon Gordon company, and he does a great job of culture building, which is basically building relationships so we can accomplish the same goal. But he has the four C's. We have to communicate. Because when there is a void in communication, negativity follows it almost every single time. So communicate with the people you're asking to help you with your projects or the people you need help with. When you communicate, you build that connection, the second C. When you build that connection, there's a greater commitment, just kind of like I had with Jeff. And we had connected, so now I'm more committed to him.
Mhm.
And then John's fourth C is then a caring. This caring that builds trust takes place. With athletic teams and goals that I set, I've changed that to that fourth C is a collective confidence.
I
Because
love
if we're
that.
communicating, if we've connected, and we're committed to each other, there's naturally going to be a more of a collective confidence that we bring to the table together. So
Yeah,
I love the four C's and wanted to share that with it. It kind of fit into what we were talking about here.
I'm glad you did. I'm really glad you did because I think that also just there is a collective confidence that once you have started on that book and you start to put yourself out there and you get feedback from whomever you start to share with, and you feel like you're receiving more constructive things to work with, then that helps you to want to keep going and thus create another book or keep talking about the first book or finding
Or,
new ways to put that book and yourself
yeah,
out there. So I kind of see what you're saying. It's like a compounding effect, another C. So
the five C's now.
but that, but I love that you said that, and I'm really glad you did. Thank you very much for sharing that. Tammy, where can people connect with you? Again, just just remind our listeners, where can they connect with you? Where can they get the book? Where can they just be a part of your world?
My website is TamiMatheny.com. Tami for Tammy, Matheny. Pretty visible on Facebook, have a lot of different Facebook groups. Any parent out there, parents in the mental game, just how you mentally can help your child. Challenger Deep, based off the last book. But on my website, you can find all my social media, and there's a confidence calendar free monthly resource I put out every month that you can click on for that, as well as links to all my books.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Well,
being back on the show.
I have enjoyed it thoroughly and could talk to you all day, and I appreciate what you do for authors.
Thank you.